Okay, so the beginning of these screencasts, we will pick up talking about the eyes. The eyes become prominent on the lateral sides of the embryonic head at around the fifth or sixth week. And within a week or so, they begin to move toward the front of the face through differential growth of the brain. And by the end of the 7th week, we have now got a face that now makes more sense. It looks more like a human form by the end of the 7th week. If you turn to your textbooks, pages 50 to 52, you'll be able to see the changes of the embryonic face, and we'll also be coloring them. We'll take a look at this first picture, and you'll note that the pink area is our frontal process, and then our medial nasal and lateral nasal processes, and here is the eye developed. So this is what it would look like around the end of the 7th week. Now on either side of the frontal process, we'll start to see a pair of buddings on the left and the right side. This happens back around week 4. And these weeks don't really, I'm never going to ask you what weeks things have developed in, but it just gives you some perspective of, we're going to look at each part of the face as it develops, but usually they all begin around week 4 and are finished by anywhere from week 7 to 12. So if we go back to the beginning of around week 4 again, we'll see these buds that come from that first pharyngeal arch that we call the mandibular arch. These buds will start to grow upward and toward the center at both the right and left sides of the stomodium, and they're called the maxillary process. This is going to develop into the future upper part of the cheeks, and the side of the upper lip, and most of the palate. So remember, I was telling you we're going to see a lot of names that will be processes off of a main body of tissue. So the main body of tissue in this case is the first pharyngeal arch, and the budding processes are the maxillary processes. Now you can start to see the formation of the facial area. So we have all of the pink areas, as I said before, will form the frontal process. Once the bilateral nasal placodes show up, that divides that lower border of the frontal into 3 sections. So we have the medial nasal process and the lateral nasal process on each side of the placodes. And the lateral nasal processes will eventually become the ala of the nose. Now remember, as that medial nasal process grows, the placodes get closer together, and the tissue in between is actually growing inward, dividing the stomodium, which is right under here. It's a big opening in there. It's going to divide the stomodium into a left and right nasal cavity. So eventually part of this medial nasal process is going to become the nasal septum. But on the outside of the face, when we look at the face, the medial nasal process basically becomes the bridge of the nose, the philtrum of the lip, and then the lower border of this is going to grow inward and become part of the palate, which we'll discuss next. So that maxillary process develops off of the first pharyngeal arch that is called the mandibular arch and has merged with all the parts of the frontal process. We'll come back to this diagram to discuss the development of the mandible, but next we'll look at the formation of the palate. If you want to pause the screencast here and actually stop the screencast in a moment, and then you can go and view the video link about the face, the development of the face.